You think about the way that things are changing, and people are becoming more emboldened to say what they think out loud and in many different formats in many different ways. You might realize all of a sudden that someone that you really thought you had a deep connection with and that you thought you knew really well, you absolutely didn't. It's just that the level of connection that you had with them felt good and it felt safe and it felt like something that was rewarding. But as soon as you know that person on a deeper level, suddenly your judgment comes in, their judgment comes in, your misalignment comes in. You feel like you have different values, and all of a sudden there's a disconnection. So even if you still see that person, just like you saw them before, you see them in a different light or through a different lens. And so now you
Yeah.
can feel disconnected from someone when the only thing that really changed is that you recognize you didn't know them like you thought you knew them. And so for somebody who's an introvert, going back to what you were saying before, if they only have a certain number of people that they're around and they're in those situations for that amount of time, and it's really specific. We see each other on Wednesdays and we have coffee and we talk for hours about all this stuff, and then suddenly that one thread that was connecting you to people is severed. What does that do
Yeah.
to the person? How are they impacted by that? Any thoughts, Jason or Alan?
Yeah, well, the idea, the disconnect between words and actions, and in the sense of like, um, if you're connected with someone for a while and they say things, and then all of a sudden they act in a way that seems contradictory to the
Oh
things that they
yeah,
said,
absolutely.
then it's like, whoa, what's going on here? And so then it's a matter of like, well, maybe they're not as sincere about those things, or maybe I misread those things,
Mm-hmm.
misapplied them. Like there's a lot of layers that could untangle there for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's one thing that comes to mind. Alan, what do you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I do. I find it funny. I mean, the one example that Jim brought up is interesting to me is if you've known someone for a long time and had and felt a closeness to them for a while, and whether it's COVID or anything else, maybe there's a political conversation that you have or something along those lines, and all of a sudden you realize that you see the world differently than this person sees, or that you assume that they saw, or maybe they've changed, or maybe you've changed. That can have, I mean, I've seen that have a big effect on, obviously how often you want to hang out with that person, and then what kind of boundaries you adjust on how you want to interact with them in the future, or how you choose to interact with them in the future, and how often you want to interact with them.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm curious why that has such a profound effect on a person. Sometimes when you reach a point of disagreement, and there seems to be, this is an oversimplification, but sometimes there's one or two different one of two different approaches you can take to that. One, you're intrigued, you're interested, you're curious, why they changed or why you feel differently about them, and you want to explore that. Versus the other approach is you just shut it off, you shut it
Mm-hmm.
down, and say, no, if they don't see things the way that I see them, or the way I want them to see them, then we can't interact anymore.
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, what makes those two situations different?
yeah. Well, there's a couple there. Two things I can think of that I've done that have created a really intense reaction. um, so the first thing I did that it created a really intense reaction with some friends and family was when I had my marketing company in 2013. In the Old Testament, there's this passage about the Sabbath year with the farmland. Every 7 years, you're supposed to let the land rest. So we decided to take our company through this Sabbath year. And for the year, we would kind of apply these principles to our company. And that ended up being the last year of the company. So ended up being a transition year towards shutting it down, which we didn't know when we started it. But I had some friends and family that had a very strong reaction to us doing this. They're like, this is an Old Testament thing. Like, this doesn't apply to your business. Like, they kind of had all these reasons, but there was just something about like how they saw themselves and how they saw the Old Testament and this particular application of it that just like kind of really offended them. Or maybe just challenged how they saw things in a way that because we were taking this action, it made them look at themselves in a way that maybe they weren't ready to. I don't know exactly. And then the other big one was me over the last couple of years getting politically public and active. I'm a Christian, and I'm also a Republican, and I've been against Trump. I've never got on the Trump train, and I've been vocal about the risk and threat that he poses to our country. And I voted for a Democrat. So that also created a very strong reaction with people I know. And also, to your point, Jim, like, wait a second, maybe we don't know each other as well as we thought we did, because you went this way and I went that way. As a Christian, my aim is, like Alan said, to have the boundaries and set them, but it's also to keep the tension in place. It's that faith in redemption that even those that have gone a different path can come back, or maybe I've gone off the rails and I'll come back.
Are you a small business owner? Have you hit a glass ceiling where year over year, you cannot rise above a certain revenue level? Check out Jason Scott Montoya's book, The Jump, to discover how to level up your leadership and pivot your entrepreneurial passion to the highest level.